Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. You see some familiar faces. That's cool. And we'll just give it another minute while folks get logged in, and then we'll get started. Allison, do you want to have folks put their name and their organization in the chat today, or does anybody find that helpful?
Yeah, a slide for that, but if people are ready
to go.
Good.
Okay.
I know everybody comes in at different times, so you all are on time and early. We appreciate that.
Very much.
And Jody, we will have handouts and slides available. We're excited about today because we have our amazing budget grant writing person, expert Bethany Fatukaito in the house. So it's going to be a good day. We've got Kelly Milligan on our team as well, and she is amazing at grant writing. We were just talking about writing SMART goals and objectives for SAMHSA and how intimidating that can be. So any questions you have today, we've got people that know the answers.
Cool. Well, I'll get started when you say the word, Allison.
Yeah, I say we just go for it. And if
okay.
People, they can catch up later.
All right. Do you want to put up the intro slides?
Okay, how's that?
That's beautiful. Thank you. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Cindy Christie, and I'm with the Peer Recovery Center of Excellence. And I want to welcome all of you today to the second session in July for Grant Writing Basics. And we're going to spend, I think, about an hour and a half today with Allison and Kelly and Bethany. So next slide, please. This is just the disclaimer that funding for this initiative was made possible by SAMHSA, and the views expressed here today do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the Department of Health and Human Services. And then next slide, please. You do next slide, Allison. There it is. Thanks. And this is just a graphic of our pathway to receive technical assistance, or TA. And TA is just a broader term for resources, support, consultation. If you go to our website, which I'll put the link in soon, all you do is right on top, there's a very large submit button, and you can put your request in to receive some technical assistance. And what happens after that is our TA manager will reach out to you and connect you with our team leads. They will talk you through and see then if we want to pull in outside consultants or subject matter experts to work with you, or if there's resources we can share with you, all sorts of things. So, and it's all free. And then I think just the housekeeping slide, the next slide. So just a few housekeeping notes to remember. Today's presentation is being recorded, and it will be posted to the Peer Recovery Center of Excellence website, along with the slides and the recording from the 11th that was also on Grant Writing Basics. But we will email all of you and let you know that it's up. We also strongly encourage people to have their videos on. We understand it's close to lunchtime for a lot of us, but if you are able, we'd love to see your faces. Our intention is to have these sessions be interactive to promote a rich conversation. So please take the opportunity to share and come off mute. You can identify yourself and let others know who's speaking. As well, throughout the presentation, you can continue to put information or questions or comments into the chat. And if there's anything that looks pressing, we'll ask our presenter to pause and respond to the question, or let you know that it will be covered later on in the presentation. And at the end of this second session for this topic, we will have a very brief evaluation, and we appreciate and value your feedback. It lets us know if we're doing things well or where we need to improve, and it's anonymous. So I think that's it for housekeeping. So I'll turn it over to Allison, and welcome all of you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you, Cindy. We are so excited to see all of you here today. And I see some familiar names and faces from the last session. So glad that you're back. And Candace Palmer is joining. She was the winner of our last session. So we'll have to see if she got the gift card in the mail. But anyway, this is one of our favorite topics that we get to train on. So glad you're here. A quick recap of session 1. Is anybody in the room today that wants to share kind of what we did in session 1? It's been a couple weeks. Love to hear kind of what you got from it, the takeaways. And Candace is here. Hey, Candace, we were just talking about you as the winner of the last prize. Did you get the card in the mail? I hope you did. If not, it will be
Yes,
coming.
ma'am, I did. Thank you so much. So I would say that last week we went over the sites that we could access to look at grants, look for grants. So you taught us how to look up grants and things that might pertain to us. And that's mainly what I remember, is those going to those sites, trying to navigate through the different websites that you spoke about, and letting us know that, you know, we could apply for more than one grant at multiple sites. And, you know, there's some things that we had to be mindful of, and providing what the grant required, so on and so forth.
Yay. That's
Yeah.
it. Anybody else? Oh, and Michael didn't receive your card. Okay, Michael, we actually need your address. So send me your address, put it in the chat, or send me an email, and I'll make sure that we get you the gift card. So, and for those of you who are not in session 1 for grant writing, the theme was abundance. And we really believe that when you come from a place of abundance, that you just keep on creating more abundance in grants and in everything else. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. And we're going to do a Kahoot. If any of you all were in session 1, you're now experts. So it'll be a lot of fun to get started with that. We'll do a quick review of the homework. And then Chris Kelly, our fearless leader, is not here today, but she really wants us to walk through an RCSP grant process, since many of you might be applying for that. So we're going to check that out. But we want today to be more of a conversation, and for you all to be able to ask questions of us, and for us to be able to provide you with answers. So that's the goal of today. And if I missed anything on that agenda that you'd like to cover, we're flexible. So let us know what you need and we'll make it happen. And so if you were not in session 1 and you don't know anything about AKA, we are a small woman-owned business, and we do work throughout the country with RCOs, tribal organizations, universities, and we have a vision in really evaluation, capacity, and transformation, healing, anything that creates this forward theory of hope for ourselves, our families, and communities. We're very much a forward-thinking, recovery-based organization, and I love everybody on our team and what we value and what we do. These are some of our clients. I don't know if any of you all have been our clients, or maybe you know our clients, but we get to do a lot of fun work. But we want to know about you all as well. And so as we mentioned earlier in the intro, if you could just write out your name, your organization and role, and if you're in a recovery and healing place, and a fun fact about you, we would absolutely love that. And while you all are typing in the chat box, our team, which is Kelly Milligan, Bethany Fatupaito, and myself, will introduce ourselves. And we do this in an interesting way where I get to introduce somebody and then they introduce me. So I'll introduce Bethany Fatupaito. So Bethany lives in Billings, Montana. She has a master's degree in public health, grew up in Pennsylvania. She's been writing grants for probably about 15 years, maybe longer. And she does many things, but that's one of the things that we rely heavily on her for. She has 5 beautiful children and a wonderful husband. His name's Junior. And she is just an amazing coworker, colleague, and friend. And it always comes from a healing place. A fun fact about Bethany is that she's a beekeeper and she has bees probably buzzing around in her backyard right now. So Bethany, I will turn it over to you to introduce either Kelly or me.
Thank you, Allison. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you. I wasn't able to be here a couple of weeks ago, so I'm glad I can be here today. I'll introduce Kelly and then she can introduce Allison. We'll go in a circle. So Kelly, I've got to work with her for the last 2 years or so. And the greatest thing that brings us together is we both have 3-year-old little daughters. And so one day she lives in California, Sacramento, and I'm in Billings. So we're quite a distance apart, but we're going to get together one of these days and we're going to get those little sweeties together because they like to see each other on Zoom. Kelly is an evaluator. So she works with Allison to do the evaluation, but she's also been a huge support in grant writing for all of the organizations that we support. And so she's a great asset on the team and just a great friend. Kelly, take it away.
Thanks, Bethany. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you guys again. Thanks for joining. So I'll introduce Allison quickly. So if you weren't here last time, Allison lives in Sisters, Oregon, beautiful Sisters, Oregon. She has a 14-year-old daughter. She is a writer, a researcher, an evaluator, a healer. She does a lot. She's written 5 books. She is a professor at University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and she is an advocate for communities. And so she really works with, as she shared earlier, a ton of community organizations, helps them publish, helps them promote their work, really elevates them on all things, just grant writing, evaluation, research, behavioral health related. So I'm excited that we can learn from her. She's been doing this work for about 25 years. And now and founded Allison Kelly and Associates, which has an amazing team of subject matter experts that we pull in from all over the country in all different subjects. So I'm excited that we can learn from her today, and I will turn it over to her.
Yay. Okay. Thank you so much, Kelly. And it was so good to read some of the chat box, the intros. Lots of people are in recovery and healing places. I'm in recovery and healing. I was thinking about that this morning as I was just praying about the day and this webinar and the people that show up and how important it is to just come from a healing space every time we show up. Even this isn't a webinar about recovery or healing, but it's just part of my life. So thank you all for being here, and we have a good group, so we're going to get started. And Daryl driving the same car since 1984. I am like, that is crazy. I love old cars. Anyway, I'm a big fan of Toyotas. I have a 2006 Toyota Highlander I drive. It's got like 200,000 miles on it, and that thing is just a beast. So Toyotas might be the place to go. Not sure what kind of car you use, Daryl, but anyway, we can talk offline. So we have some learning objectives today. We want to review a SAMHSA RFA just to kind of understand a little bit more about the grant writing process. Sometimes when I look at an RFA, I can feel a little overwhelmed, and you might as well. So we'll just kind of break it down and make it real. We're going to draft a proposal outline, or at least start to do that. I don't know how many multitaskers we have in the room. You might have like double, triple screens. I'm a multitasker. So I encourage you to like get a Word document open and, you know, start thinking about what an outline could look like for a SAMHSA grant or something else. Take some notes, draw anything that feels good for you. We'll talk about some challenges and provide some solutions. And we just want to share some skills, knowledge, and resources. And again, our goal is to support organizations and communities so that they can create healing spaces for everybody, for the world. And now probably the best part of the entire session, I think, is the Kahoot. So if you all were in our session last time, we're going to just kind of get going. So Kahoot is something that if you haven't done, you're going to do it now. And I'm going to share my screen. It gets a little bit weird when we're just getting started. It takes a few minutes, but just hang with me because I feel like it's totally worth it. So this is Abundant Grant Writing Session 2. I'm sharing my screen. You can do this on your cell phone, or you can also do it on your desktop computer. It's going to give you a code and or a PIN, and you'll enter that into the website. So you go to this website, which is www.kahoot.it, and then you enter this PIN, 884-3710. You can also scan that QR code if you're into tech savvy things like QR codes. Bethany has joined us. Nay has joined us. I encourage y'all to use different names if you want. You don't have to use your real name. You can be whoever you want to be. And so we'll wait a few minutes just for people to get started. We like to have at least half the people join because, you know, why not? And Kelly, if you can put the Kahoot.it and the pin in the chat box, that might be helpful for people that are just getting on. And you can, I think you can join late too, just if something happens. Like you lost Bethany. Lost her fearless grant writer. Okay. Oh, good. She's back. Okay. Well, we're going to get started with our 14. And if you're still getting on board with Kahoot, it's never too late to join. So just keep that address and PIN in your memory and we can get going. And this will probably take maybe 10 minutes with that. Probably less. I think we have fewer questions. Okay, so we have people from all over the US. A few sessions ago, we had people from Canada, I think Guam as well. But we want you to drop a pin in the state that you live in. And this can be accomplished by just placing your cursor in the state that's on the map. Okay, wow. So we have participants from all over, a lot of people in the Northeast, which is exciting. Minnesota, Montana, Utah, Colorado, Arizona. I'm in Oregon, I didn't play, but glad to have you all here. So recovery is happening everywhere. So is grant writing. So here's an open-ended question that will type your response. And we want to know why you're here today. Like, why did you show up? We've had people write that because they had nothing better to do, their boss told them they had to. And then a lot of people say because they want to learn how to write a grant, or they want to learn more about budgets, increase their skills, or even connect with people. Even though we're kind of moving out of COVID, it's nice just to connect and take an hour out of a day to hear somebody else engage. So 8 people, actually 11 people shared. Let's see, let's show. Okay, so CEUs, I need money. Grant writing, to learn to write a grant, to gain understanding. Okay, oh good, to be more marketable. I love that, to share some knowledge. Yeah, and you all probably have a lot of collective knowledge. We'd love to have you all chime in on what we talk about today, because you know, knowledge is something that's collective, and there are many different ways that we learn and share. I have a long-term goal of opening a peer respite that requires funding. Love it. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. I'm glad that you're here, and those are the reasons why. So I want you to think about your life and your work. Where is there abundance? And because the theme of our work and grant writing session is all about abundance, we want to hear from you. And you can make this personal, or you can make it about your organization. So areas where you have just a lot of resources, a lot of support, a lot of wellness, contentment. Joy, love, recovery, passion, to learn from you all. I love it. Okay. Well, that is really, I mean, that's wonderful. We're glad that you're feeling that. And just, yeah, this is all a gift. University of Wisconsin reached out to us and they're like, hey, do you want to do this? We're like, sure. So that's abundance right there. Just, you know, Chris and her team having the resources to bring us to you, and then you're here with us. So you can just think about it in that way. So what's your experience with grant writing? None, some, or a ton, and you'll just pick one of those answers. Okay, so 53% said none, and then we have 33 that said some, and then 13%, 2 people said a ton. So for the 2 people that said a ton, we want you to teach the next workshop because every writer has some tricks. We just kind of asked this again, but this is about areas of abundance in your organization. So would love to hear, like, if you think your peer recovery support specialist or the greatest area of abundance, maybe you have a really cool building, or you have support from your city council, or maybe you just got a new leader. It could be anything. Shared knowledge. Person first. Love it. Owning our mistakes. Oh, this is awesome. Okay. So we're already in a good place to think about grant writing and all of that. And this is a question from Bethany. Do you create the budget before you start writing a grant or after it's written? And so you type your response. If you've never written a grant, you can think about what you would do if you had written a grant, or if you're writing a grant. And for some reason, this one has a lot of time built into it, I guess, so people can really think hard about the question. There's no wrong or right answer on this one. It's just whatever you think is going to work best for you. And I actually don't know how to lessen the time, so we will let it run out and see if we can get everybody to respond. Just like they have. Love the music. You know, in our experience, we write budgets first, or at least we try to, because then we know what we're writing the grant for. Like, why write a grant if you don't need any money? So it's always good to think about what you need and also the areas of abundance. So let's see what people said. Oh, okay. Most people said before, but a few people said after. And again, it's based on kind of what your preference is. I will say that you begin with a budget, but it will change. It will change because as you're writing the grant, you'll be like, oh, I need this person to help. We need this line item and things like that. So all good thoughts. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share about writing a grant budget? Or for the two people we have in the house that know a ton about grant writing, and I wish I knew your names, would love to hear your thoughts on that as far as writing a budget, if you do that before or after. And let's see if there's anything in the chat. Okay, Candace said compassion. Okay. So we're not gonna, well, did anybody that's here today, did you all do the homework? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but would love to know if maybe you reviewed the grant application that we shared, or maybe you found a grant opportunity and you're like, hey, I want to take this back to Allison and Kelly and I want to have them help me write it. Any thoughts on that? It's okay if you didn't do it because this is not a graded webinar. Oh, good. So Jody said she identified a grant application but didn't have time to write it. Okay, Jody will let us know what grant application that you identified, and would love to hear more about that. Maybe we can support you after this is over and finding time to do that. Anybody else? Okay, and Cynthia, you raised your hand.
I did. So I actually chose the option one just because I'm not familiar with grant writing or the processes or the language, like anything really. So I kind of really was looking to get an idea of what it would look like. So I was intrigued in looking at that. Over the first question is I really like the information, the stats that they had and the information on the org itself. The letters of support other organizations supporting them was in abundance. So I thought that was really amazing. And then just the language, like the language is, I'm still very much learning that kind of language. So I find that intriguing. I couldn't tell you, what the weaknesses were because I really am not familiar with that. The things and support that I would need for my organization would just be the time, any of them people to work hand on hand in. And I have those thanks to TA requests, like through Peer Recovery Center of Excellence and whatnot. But it's just getting the time because I have a full-time job on top of the work that I do for Mission Restart. So it's a juggling act for me. So I would definitely need the time, and that's kind of why I'm here, to figure out how to get funding so I can put more of my time into it. So.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. I'm really glad that you reviewed that. And that's a great, just reading a grant application that's been funded is a nice way to kind of get your feet wet and begin the grant writing path. It's interesting because like the time situation is so essential to grant writing. It's like, and you need time, but then you also need money. And what I have seen is that once organizations get their first or second grant and that gives them additional funds, then they can just grow their grant portfolio and they can hire grant writers. SAMHSA has some rules about that, like not using federal funds to hire people to write grants. But that's a different story. I think that there are ways to do that, or even train staff and then staff do that. So I'm really glad that was helpful. And it sounds like a lot of people were able to find some grants that they're interested in applying for. So that's the first step. And like Kelly and I had showed in our last session, sometimes you'll find a grant and you think it's great. And then you go down the road of writing it and then you're like, oh, I'm going to stop the race. I'm going to stop writing. And we kind of use the analogy of grant writing as like running a marathon or a race. Kelly and I are both runners. And so there's all these things that you do to prepare. And then when you're actually running, there are things that you need as well. So it's a good process. So if you were not in the first session, we just want to kind of review some basic steps of grant writing. And you'll see that the budget here is at the end. But again, we really think that should start at the beginning. But this is just kind of the overall flow of what that packet might look like, especially with the SAMHSA grant application like we're going to talk about today. And so we're going to kind of jump right into writing an RCSP grant and have a conversation. So I'm going to turn off my slide deck, stop sharing so that we can see faces. Is that okay with you all? Or so I can see faces? Okay. And so one of the things that we were thinking about, you know, like how do you teach grant writing in 90 minutes or like 2 sessions and stuff. I'm really big about like listening to people talk. I might even like eavesdrop too much, but like I want to hear the story of like how people did things. And then I'm like, okay, I can do that. And so when Bethany and I and Kelly were talking about today, how do we share the story? I thought we could just kind of have an interview, kind of like a storytelling about grant writing. And we're going to use the RCSP grant as an example and talk about it. And so the first thing that Bethany you start with is the budget, right? Okay. So have you written an RCSP grant before?
Have I?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And how, like, I just want to know how many SAMHSA grants have you written? Just like estimate.
You know, I should have it written down, but I don't. I've probably written over 20, I would say.
Okay. And they were funded, like all of them?
Yeah. Yep. I feel like SAMHSA for me has become it's a really straightforward process. And so I appreciate that about SAMHSA. And so I feel like I think Allison just said that too, of just, you know, like once you get your first one done, you're like, oh, okay. And then you can start copying and pasting from that one and put into the next one. Then you can copy and paste a little bit more and put into the next one. And so it seems like it's an overwhelming thing because most of those notice of funding opportunities are usually like 60 pages long, but they're usually the exact same thing, except a little bit different at the very beginning. So.
Right. I think you've written more than 20. I think it's more like 40. I don't know. But like having 100% track record is crazy. So great job on that. I didn't even know that. So that's amazing. So we talked about starting with the budget, and you were just generous enough to share some examples that we can pull up in the chat box with the budget. So I'm going to do that actually now. Just so we can briefly talk about those before we get into looking at that RCSP grant. Does that sound okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
and I could even share my screen too. Whatever's easier. I have it pulled up.
Oh, yeah, either way, I've got mine up too, but so this is the shared folder that we'll share with the team. Everybody on the call, you all are now our marathon race team. And it has what we're talking about today. So Bethany, what would be a good place to start? Which one of these shall we do first?
The third file, that one.
Okay. So this is an Excel budget example. And let's see here. Okay, I can zoom in here if you want to like 200%. Oh,
I think this is a good example of where while grants start to feel overwhelming, you can just kind of take it one bite at a time, right? And so this is my budget that I use for every grant, whether it's a SAMHSA grant or a justice grant. I always start here because it helps my brain kind of get a whole, like a big wide lens view of the actual grant. Because we know that we're writing the grant because we need the money, right? And so it kind of helps. I always have this open when I start talking to our partner or client, and I just start taking notes inside of it. So there's always going to be these categories in a federal grant of personnel, fringe, travel, equipment, etc. All of those you'll always see. Sometimes they'll be in a different order, but those will exist in SAMHSA grants, CDC grants, justice grants, etc. Probably your state grants. They might be a little bit different, but that is where I like to start. And so what I'll do is when, let's say Alice and I are having a conversation, Kelly, and we're talking about, oh, well, we know that we want to write this grant. We want to make sure that we have a peer support recovery specialist in there. And so I put that person in, and then I start writing notes like in column D, where it'll be, we know that according to the grant, like most of the time we'll have already looked at the notice of funding opportunity. And so we'll say, oh, well, we know that we have to have a peer support specialist. They have to be at least 50%. You know, they'll list out, is it a key personnel? Like what kind of, when everybody's applying for this grant, there's usually a key personnel, like the project director has to be at least 25% or 50%. And I gave an example here that oftentimes when I write a grant for one organization, the director is in kind. So that's why it says in kind there, and they're not pulling any money. But Cynthia, yes, you have a question.
What do you mean by, I mean, this may sound be like a dumb question. What do you mean by like, be at 50% or be at 25%? I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, no, that's not dumb at all. So that's if they're working just part-time. So that's their FTE. Yeah, and so that person would be working as a half-time employee. So the budget we always give for a full-time employee is the 2,080 hours, 2080. Actually, I'm going to write that in the full-time is 2080, 280 or 2,080 hours, and then part-time or 50%, how I have it written there, would be 1,040 hours. And so that's helpful because if you know their hourly rate, you can just put that into the Excel spreadsheet and you can create, you can start figuring out kind of a general idea of how much money it's going to cost to cover their position. Yeah, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this, by the way. It's helpful. I noticed that you have the project director as in kind, but as far as the grant administrator, I noticed there's not a line item for that particular role. So if there's not a line item, is that assumed that the project or program director is going to be doing that work?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so that's where, I guess this example here is with SAMHSA, because they usually have, they'll tell you in the notice of funding opportunity that, you know, that you have to have the project director be at a certain amount, and that would be the person that's taking full ownership of that grant. And so in your organization, it might be something different. And so I think that's where, you know, there has been issues where, according to SAMHSA, you're going to call it the project director, but in your organization, you're going to call it the grant administrator. And so that's just something that you have to figure out. It's usually not an issue. It's just they want to make sure that someone's responsible for the grant.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? I love that hand raising option. It makes it super easy because it just pops up right away. Okay, so just, you know, breaking it down here. So travel, and again, these are just estimates that you start out with. So we could do, oh, the fringe benefit rate. Sorry, Allison, go back up there. You know, usually you'd have to work with your HR department to figure out what the percentage is. And there might be different rules, you know, if they're not full-time, they don't receive them. But that's where this right here is just getting your mindset straight. And then you would have to go put it into like the budget template that SAMHSA has, or whatever funder has for you. But travel, I like to go down there and say, okay, well, I know there's going to be in-state travel. There's going to be mileage. Maybe you need to go to a training, and you know it's going to be halfway across the country. So, you know, you start kind of figuring out, you know, usually flights are $500. So I'm going to start adding that into there. Supplies. Oh, and real fast on the equipment. Usually with a grant, you're not even going to ask for equipment. That's something that's going to be $5,000 or more. And so that would be, I guess, if you're buying a car or something for transportation, like we've been able to write a grant recently to do a mobile unit. And so we were able to put that into our equipment. But typically you leave that alone because there's just a lot more paperwork that goes into it. And most of the time we're not buying cars. Supply line item would be your general office supplies, pens, papers, printing or ink, that kind of stuff. I mean, it could also be program incentives. Typically I put that into the other cost category, but just anything that any kind of paper supply or something you would get at Office Depot, right? So that could be your computer, your chair, any of that kind of stuff. And then the next line item is the contractual. And so that's when you're working with maybe subject matter experts, an evaluator. This is typically where we come in, Allison Kelly and Associates. So we'll have an evaluator line item, grants management, maybe a graphic design person that would help you with brochures and flyers, things like that. And there's usually not, there are limits in terms of how much you can pay them per hour for SAMHSA, but typically things are, they're open and free to however your organization, under your policies and procedures. SAMHSA usually has a lot of leniency and most organizations do as well. So the other costs, other costs, that would be like, so SAMHSA grants, let's say they do, we have to do a GIPRA. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but entering into information into their systems. So typically we'll give an incentive for individuals that come in for that survey. So there's a cap there. So like $30 per person per survey. But other costs could be, maintenance for that vehicle you purchased up in equipment, or maybe emergency kits for homeless. If you're going to support homeless individuals, maybe finding placement for domestic violence or whatever topic you're looking at. This is where the other costs, so they don't really kind of fit into anything above that. So you just throw it all into the other cost line item. And the last cost would be your indirect cost, and that would come from your finance department too. So typically with an organization, there's a percentage that is charged against the total direct cost. So for this example, there's a 27.08% that's charged to total direct cost. And so sometimes it can get pretty expensive, but that's just where you work closely with your finance department to see what has been negotiated with the federal department. And then your total cost, you want to make sure it never goes over what the actual notice of funding opportunity says that you can spend on. Yes, Trevor.
Could you explain the contents of indirect costs a little more broadly?
Yeah, so I'm definitely no expert in this area, but for indirect costs, so your finance department would submit an application to, I'm not even actually sure, like just the federal arm who overlooks all of that. And that typically covers the cost of like your finance director, your rent, things like that is usually in there. And it'll spell it out in that application what it goes for. And so whenever you're submitting your application, you have to include that PDF of whatever was negotiated. Because if you let's say your organization covers the rent of your building in indirect costs, but we actually had put that in other costs to say, oh, we'll pay for rent $1,000 a month for 12 months. They would make us take that out and redirect that funding to something else.
SAMHSA, among other providers of grants, often define the indirect costs allowed in the original RFR, do they not?
SAMHSA is actually pretty lenient. You can put in your rate. I know that in the past I've dealt with like CDC and they capped it at 10%. So there are some organizations that will cap it and not let you do that full 27% or whatever it might be. Also, it will cover some of your administrative personnel. So yeah, like the people that are doing your invoicing, or maybe the COO or CFO. It'll cover those costs too.
Well, and let me put the link, Bethany, that was super helpful. I'm going to put a link to that in our chat box, just the resources we're sharing today. I realize that we have them at the end of the slide deck, but you probably want to check them out now. So this Dropbox link that's in the chat box, let me know if you can access it, but it has that resource and more. One thing to note about IDC is like, we have seen organizations like universities have IDCs as much as like 60%, 58%. It gets super crazy. So that means they're taking over half of the funds just to support their infrastructure, their admin costs. I don't know what University of Wisconsin is. A lot of times you can negotiate those rates to be lower, or I've even seen some funders say the max is like 10%. So then, the organization has to decide if they want to proceed. But what the IDC does is it gives your organization funding to do all of those things that you can't do, like hire the bookkeeper, or pay the rent, get the phone lines going. So all of these basic things you need to operate, it's like it's hard to get funding for those, but the IDC can cover that. In our examples from session 1, I know we have an IDC letter, Bethany, from Eastern Shoshone. So we could pull that up, and it's just basically a letter that says like your approved IDC rate is 27% for this year. And it has to do with like an audit that they do and then looking at all of their expenses. So I've also seen that change. One of the organizations we work with used to have an IDC at 50%. It's down to 10% now. I don't know what went on, why that happened, but it does change. Just so you know. So that's a budget example, but Bethany, and then we'll get it to the narrative in a little bit. So let's say we're writing this RCSP grant, and I'm going to pull that up. Let's see here. So is anybody in the
Allison, if you can hear us, you're frozen. Hi, everybody. Sorry, we'll get this figured out.
Thanks for speaking and let me know it wasn't me. I thought it was me.
No, it's everybody. I'm sorry. I wish
I
it
was
was
like,
you.
what happened to my computer?
Okay, it looks like she dropped off. Oh, wait. Allison, can you hear okay? You're muted now.
Okay, that was wild. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a weird day for technology. Something's
Yeah.
happened.
Turn off your video. I mean, we love seeing your face, but that might help with bandwidth.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna share the.
Now, if you can hear me, Allison, you're freezing. I'm sorry, folks. We were talking about technology just before we got on.
Well, I guess while Allison gets reconnected, I mean, if we want to keep talking about budgets, I could just take over on that area. And then when she jumps back on, we can go
Yeah.
to the actual proposal.
You're wonderful, Bethany. Thank
Okay.
you.
So
Well,
one of the, well, I'll try not to panic. No, just kidding. I wanted to show you guys, again, I'm sorry that this is so SAMHSA heavy, but that's just where most of my experience is. And so I know that also SAMHSA is a good, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. SAMHSA is, they're just a really good funder to work with. I think they are really upfront with everything. I've had great experience. So can you see that budget template?
It just shifted to a list of participants.
Oh, sorry, that's you guys. I was
Yep.
trying to, I have two screens here, so I hate when I have to turn my head. So hold on, let me do that again. I just want to put it on the same screen so I can look at you guys at the same time. Let's see. So how many people have actually done a SAMHSA grant? Trevor has. Looking for any other nods, maybe a couple. And so this is actually pretty new within the last couple of years. And so this is, they used to just tell you to describe everything. So this is called the budget justification. I should start there. And so, they would tell you the same categories I just showed you in the Excel spreadsheet. But now what they do is they've created this PDF. And at first it was super, super hard and annoying. But now actually, now that I'm used to it, it's actually really helpful, because what you do is as you start to fill in things, it's adding up at the bottom. And I will try not to make you dizzy. But I guess we could just walk through this a little bit, and then not to bore you though, but every space here, you're filling in. So let's just say, ABC department or ABC organization, can't spell, organization. And, you're putting in the funding award number, and that comes from, if I switch this, let me know. Can you guys see that? Okay, so, this is what you would normally look at, right? This is your notice of funding opportunity. It's giving you, this is going to give you all the information. This is what I'm telling you about, like 75 pages. It can be overwhelming, but, it really just reminds me of going back to school. And this is just a really clear way of writing your paper. That's how I look at it as. And so oftentimes, looking at this notice of funding opportunity award, like, look, if there's 71 available, so I would say, let's go for it, right? When there's like maybe 5, it's going to be highly competitive, but if there's 71, you've got a good chance of getting the funding. So back to here, you're going to use some of those numbers from that same notice of funding award. That's why I like having 2 screens too, because then I can keep this one on my one screen and then put the rules necessary, like we'll call it rules for namesake, and we'll put it on the other one. And then you can just go back and forth, making sure that you're getting everything that they want in there. So going back to that Excel spreadsheet that we just looked at, now instead of just having it on an Excel line, you're actually putting it in there. So your peer support specialist, I know that they're going to make $23 an hour. They're part-time, like we talked about, at 50%. So then I'm going to put in those hours, that 1,040 hours, that represents 50% time. This is where you're going to put in, maybe you already know who's going to, Bethany Batupaito is going to be this person. And then look at fills in right here. And we know that Bethany has worked with us for the last 10 years. That's where you write the justification, and she's going to work 50% time. And she has the qualifications to do this job, etc. And remember how I had the project director as being in kind? So they actually have a table here that shows the in kind personnel table, which is great. So if you check it, this automatically fills in, and then you can put whoever that person's going to be. And so it'll say that it's 25%, but it's not going to put any dollar amount to it. For the fringe benefits, you have to break it down by whatever your HR department will give you. And then here is where, let's say, I guess, this is where some policies, they're 50% time. So maybe they wouldn't get full benefits, and that's where you can change the number. That's why they give you the ability to change that number. Maybe they're not going to get that full rate. Travel can get tricky. So let's say, you're flying somewhere. So maybe you have to fly to or drive to the airport. And then here, there's a bunch of, let's see, we're at the airport, or airfare, it's going to be $500, quantity per person, only one person's flying for this trip, that kind of thing. And so you can mark it down for your lodging, your per diem, whatever you need for that actual trip. Equipment, here's the equipment line item. Like I said, I usually leave it empty because we're usually buying things that are under $5,000 each. General office supplies. Most of the time, SAMHSA wants you to break it down. But for general office supplies, it's not like you have to break it down like, 25 cents per pen, buying 100 pens. Just general office supplies will be purchased for the program. But you also have to specify that it's only going to be used by the program, because they don't want you buying pens and paper for your entire office. Contractual here. So this is where you would put them as a consultant or a contract or a sub-award. Again, that would come from your department. You get to choose that. It's a little bit tricky. They have you break down, you know, if a consultant has all fringe benefits as well that you're paying for, all those fees, maybe even indirect costs. That's where you would put it all in. I won't go into that too much because it can get pretty wild. All right. Construction, not applicable. Most grants aren't going to let you pay for a new building. And then other, we just wrote a grant recently where I put infrastructure in that this was allowed. They actually specified that you're allowed, typically you're not, but maybe redoing a room. This was going to be for a safe space for people in crisis. So once you get down here, so look at it added up all for me right here. And I would put that amount 197,227 here. Because I know my indirect charges will be applied to the total amount of direct costs. And then it pulls it all down here for me. It added it up. And then if, depending on how long the grant is, this is a 3-year grant. And I know that because of this right here, told me 3 years. So then I would put in years 2 and 3 that I'm going to ask for. Typically what I do, it's a little bit just to keep it easy, is I don't really think too hard of what years 2 and 3 will be, because you're going to have to reapply for those years anyway. You'll get funded for the full 3, but you'll have to do continuation applications with SAMHSA every year. And so you'll get to redo this year 2 and year 3. So I don't take a lot of time here to figure out raises or anything like that, because basically all they want to know is if you're asking for all 3 years. Funding limitations, typically there's limitations with SAMHSA grants, and they'll tell you that here. So let's go limitations. So here, funding limitations or restrictions, no more than 20% of the total award for the budget period may be used for data collection, performance measurement, and performance assessment. And so they're going to make you write it out here. So funding limitation restrictions, I'm just saying that it's staying under 20%. So right here, it's just 11%. One thing that's really nice about this PDF is that it will give you the SF424. And I don't know if you've ever done anything like this, but when you go into grants.gov, you have to complete this table. And so this is helping, again, this is pre-populating it for me, which is really helpful, because you could print this out and then just copy it into, or your grant admin person can just print this out and copy it into the online federal system in grants.gov. So this is where, again, this is just that same breakdown that they did for me. And then it might be different for you all, but if you're asking for non-federal resources or anything else, usually I just leave those things blank. But that's a lot. And so let me stop sharing. I see there's a couple questions here. Oh, great. And Allison's back too. So is there any questions from that budget template? Okay. Allison, I'll let you jump back in.
Right. Well, I have a hard line with my computer. My team knows that, like, this was, sometimes internet at the end of a gravel road's really bad, but we have a lot of fire and smoke. And so I think maybe there's something going on with internet. I don't know, but it looks good right now. So I did put a copy of an IDC rate from University of New Mexico in the chat box if you want to check that out. I was noticing with one of our tribal clients, it actually is published from the Department of Interior. So I think it depends on the type of organization, but again, it's on behalf of the federal government. I wanted to just check out the RCSP NOFO, because I feel like, or Chris felt like, that's a funding opportunity that you all might go after. And so I realized we have a half hour left in the session. I don't know if we want to take like a 5-minute break to stretch our legs, get a drink, or if we want to power through it. We are up for whatever you feel like doing. We know after 20 minutes, most people check out unless it's like a really good movie or there's something really amazing happening. So show of hands or in the chat, do you want a break or do you want to power through it? Bathroom break. Okay. Yeah, let's just take 5 minutes. I'll stay online so we can visit. And if you want to stretch your legs and do that, we can do that. But thank you, Bethany, for sharing those budgets. That's and one of the things that Chris had sent, and I'm just kind of talking offline, but she had sent really helpful information about how to register and get set up for a federal grant. So all of that is in the resource file as well. It's kind of a step-by-step process, but it's definitely doable. So if you're just starting and you're wanting to find funds, it's not that hard to get set up. It does take, I think, some time, maybe like 6 weeks. So if you see a funding opportunity and it's like due tomorrow, it probably wouldn't be the best. You know, a lot of foundations though, and private funders don't go through the grants.gov portal, and they have a lot different submission. Even, you know, their budgets are a little bit different, but that example that Bethany shared is super helpful, just thinking about where you need funds. One of the things we were able to do with SAMHSA funding for medication-assisted treatment is buy a mobile unit, like a Mercedes Sprinter van. And so I don't know if we have a photo of that we could upload, Bethany, and share. But that unit is just amazing. It has like their entire logo, and they're using it to do outreach. So they're taking that unit out all on the reservation. It's really rural. And just, you know, reaching out to people, seeing what they need. And one of our ideas was to target areas where there's a lot of overdoses happening. We get that data from ODMAP, which is a wonderful resource. So it's kind of strategic in the outreach they're doing. And so that's been pretty cool to see how funds have been able to be used in the community. Like, wow, these funds are really helping. Are there any questions about anything we've covered so far, just while we're on break, while you all are thinking about budgets and grants and everything? There's got to be one question. So Bethany has put the van. Now, and those are the specs.
I know, I need to find the actual picture of it. I don't think I ever saved it.
I think I have it, but I'm kind of afraid to look for any files.
Yeah.
With my
I'll keep
computer.
looking.
Okay. I know there was one from Phil, but they've had just like some amazing feedback and good times in that mobile unit. So that's an example where the SAMHSA budget of equipment came in. And you know, the other thing that we look at when we're writing grants is like, how much are they going to fund? Because if it's like a $20,000 grant for like 30,000, we don't usually go after those. In our experience, it might be different for other people, but they're just as much work. Sometimes they require more reporting, and you don't get a lot of money. I don't know. I don't want to dissuade people that maybe they found the perfect like nonprofit grant to give funds for a specific thing. But you know, we look at funding, and like the MAT grant from SAMHSA, I really encourage you all to apply for that. We worked on 2 grants, so we have an application you could look at even and copy. We have really generous partners, even like sharing those examples in the resource file. Kelly Webb at Doyanatsu said, yeah, please share, like the more money we can get for recovery, the better. And we really take on that same value and theme when we're writing grants. So happy to share the SAMHSA MAT funding narrative, so you all can get some MAT, medication-assisted treatment funding. And Kelly, that was, you all were funded at Kawake for MAT. Is it like 500,000 a year for 5 years, or how many years?
750.
No way. Oh my gosh. That is so much money. So yeah, like why not just go after the abundance, like go after the big grant, and especially if you feel like you have the capacity to do it. But yeah, we'd be happy to share those examples, or maybe it's after the session and you like see the PFS grant pop up in SAMHSA. It's going to be posted again in June of next year. you're like, hey, I want a copy of that funded grant, like, let us know. We have a ton of SAMHSA applications we can share. So you don't have to do all of the work. Some of them get better scores than others. I don't know. I think one of the last ones that I worked on, and I think I did most of the writing, it was like, it was like kind of an average score. And I was like, oh, really? But you know, whatever. Still got funded. So I'm wondering, Bethany or Kelly, I'm not going to share my screen because of, you know, whatever, internet, but can we just pull up the RCSP NOFO and kind of check that out, as far as, because I think this is kind of what Chris wanted us to walk through, just to become friends with this SAMHSA funding opportunity. Do you have that, Bethany or Kelly?
I think Kelly does, so she'll pull it up.
Cool. And so by a show of hands, because we don't have a lot of talkers today, which is fine. Is anybody going to go after the RCSP grant that's in the house today? Michael, are you itching your head? Or are you going for it?
I think we're gonna go for it.
Okay. Well, now we can actually open a Word document. We should walk this through with your organization. Is that it? Like, let's just act like we're Michael and we're looking at it. So is that okay, Michael? You want to stay off mute so you can be our guest here?
I'm fine with that.
Cool. Okay. So this is an old NOFO. This was due in May, but SAMHSA is great because they typically fund the same grants every year and they don't usually change that much, you know, and I love that. So it's due on May 30th. Okay, if we want to scroll down, look at some other important information for Michael's company. I don't really look at any of this yet. Okay, the executive summary. Now this is where everything is good that we need to know. So if I'm Michael, working with Michael, and let's say, Michael, you've hired our team to help you write this. Let's just say that. So we're going to look at the purpose. So why is this funding available? Well, it's to provide peer recovery support services. Oh, I love that. Okay. And so it's co-occurring mental disorders. So recovery, all things recovery. Okay. And then it talks about services being in conjunction with clinical treatment. And we are just all about recovery coaching, recovery models. So this is it, Michael. We are on board. We're going for it. And then, Michael, what's the mission of your organization? Or tell us like what you all do.
Hold on here. I'm trying to copy and paste some things from this PowerPoint. So we are a peer-run recovery community organization. We'll be providing peer support, peer mentorship, person-centered case management for those with SUD, and recovery-oriented activities. Basically, our organization embraces the multiple paths to recovery. So not only do we provide, different groups and resources for recovery, we also bring in people from the other different organizations like AA and NA. Knowing that everybody's recovery doesn't fit one particular model. I know several people who have established recovery through other models and other channels, but I still, my dream for my recovery KC is to incorporate whatever a person needs to support their recovery. And so without getting too wordy, which I tend to do, that's pretty much what we do.
Yeah, no, that's good. And that will come in the section we talk about your organization and mission and all that. So it's due on May 30th. When do you think you would start writing that? Like, how many months do you need?
Well, I mean, this is going to be our first foray out in grant writing. Now, is this a current grant that's out there and available?
No, it's not. It closed, so it's kind of tricky, but SAMHSA will probably post the same exact one next year. They usually post them around like January or February, and it'll be due in around the same time. Like that's kind of what we've seen with this one and other ones. And Chris was kind of feeling the same way. So that's why she wanted us to use this one. So you think we'd start like in February or March?
Okay, that's what I thought. So I was just, I'm not sure why my thumb is going up there. Maybe it's because
No, it's good. Yeah. it's good.
but that's what I thought, but we have we were on the last process of being able to accept SAMHSA grants. So we're in that process where we're waiting the 4 to 6 weeks for that fourth and final process. So we will be in line to totally be ready for when this grant is available to us.
Cool. So you're going through that right now. So if anybody's in the group today that hasn't started that, reach out to Michael and be like, if you have questions, be like, hey, because you're going through it, maybe you'll have similar challenges and similar solutions. So it looks like it's 1.2 million, and that's for the total award. So up to 5 years. And it looks like 300,000 per year per award. And Bethany, does that typically include indirect, that total?
Yes, that would include indirect.
Okay. And so that IDC rate that we were talking about, that percentage, it would be minus that. And then, Michael, do you all have an IDC rate yet or indirect rate?
No.
Okay. And it's okay if you don't have one. I mean, you could still apply as you continue to get funding and federal funding. That's something you might consider.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Well, we can give you some resources after the call. Like Bethany, I'm not an expert in IDC, but I know that we have worked with a lot of organizations like yours that don't have an IDC that's approved. And so what they do is when they're applying for a SAMHSA grant or a DOJ or whatever, they will put in things like rent and telephone and a bookkeeper and everything that would be covered in an IDC. They'll actually put those out in the grant. And Bethany, maybe you and I can work on that a little bit to put together an IDC file just based on what we know.
And I was just Googling it right now. And so the US Department of Labor has a PDF. I'll put in the chat box right now, kind of a step-by-step guide of how to apply for one. So I'll share that. And then, yeah, definitely we should dig a little deeper.
Yeah, we're definitely not, we're not experts in that, but we can, it's good. We want to learn and we want to help you all. So there's no cost sharing. And Michael, that's good because if you guys are just starting, you probably don't have funds to cost share. And a cost share is like what it sounds. It's like, okay, you must, match 20% of the grant or 10%. In this case, it's not. So we're good there. It's going to start on September 30th. That's SAMHSA's new date fiscal year for most grants. We've seen some that are in July and August, but normally it's September 30th. And you would know about that in August. So they only give you a month. So Michael, next year, you're going to be writing this and you're only going to, you'll know a month before you start. So, and it's 5 years. So, okay, Kelly, let's keep on cruising and see what else is in here. Okay, eligibility. This is really important because we want to make sure that we're eligible, that we can apply. And again, like Chris said, that most of you all would be eligible. So it's public or private nonprofit entities. We work with a lot with tribes and organizations. And then if we were not sure, Michael, if you all were eligible, we would click on section 3, but we're pretty sure that you are. But yes, let's make sure we check that out.
We're a nonprofit 501c3, so.
Well, then we don't even need to go to section 3. So, all righty. Okay, so let's keep on cruising and see what else we can learn from this NOFO. And okay, so this is just information about submission. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but Chris put together a wonderful resource after the last session. That resource is in the resource Dropbox. It's called like Getting Started or something, and it has all the information. So the program description, this is what I'm going to read just to figure out what this grant is about, why they're funding it. And a lot of times when I'm writing a grant, I copy and paste SAMHSA's language and I use that language in a grant, and it's not plagiarizing. So let's keep on going. It's all about lived experience of peers, many paths to recovery, Michael, everything you guys are doing. So Michael, we're going to check out the key personnel here and tell us a little bit about, like, how do you envision, like, will you be the director? Who do you think will be on this grant?
So I will be the director. My partner, Tammy, is going to, she's also going to be a director in the program as well. Well, I'll be the director. She'll be, I forget what title we actually gave her. However, we will have her, and then we will have some additional peer support and peer mentors that we'll be bringing on staff as well, is our hope. So,
Okay.
our outlook.
Yeah, that sounds good. So you'll have some key personnel. Peer recovery support specialists are a lot of times considered key personnel. One of the things that, and this is really big about people with a lived experience working as key staff and part of it, so that's a really good idea. Sometimes we see programs putting in the contractor line item. So if they want to bring in like a MAT, a medication assisted treatment provider, or a behavioral health provider, like if you have needs that are not covered under your personnel, that's where those would go. Okay, let's look at the required activities. So the required activities are what they are funding you to do. And out of everything, you can have a million great ideas, but this is what you know, these are the things you absolutely have to do. The other thing is that, so it's providing direct services, but everything has to start within the 4th month. And that's a fast startup, but it's really possible. In the resource file, I put together an example of a 5-year SAMHSA timeline from a grant we worked on with UNM. And you can use that and you can change that so that it shows, Michael can have this project, but in that timeline. So that will be a separate attachment. So they want you to provide services like employment coaching, recovery coaching, housing, trauma-informed approach, care navigation. And so, Michael, it feels like you guys are doing all of these things already, right?
Most definitely. And these are the things that our peer support specialists and peer mentors will be doing.
Okay, so this is feeling really good right now. And
Most definitely.
You raised your hand, so tell us what you think. Got a question?
You're talking to me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Thank you. I was just wondering, so are you required to like do every single one of these things or a combination of them? And so like you would just need to explain how you would be doing each of those individual things?
Yeah, and I can send you an example. I'll take down your name of how I do it. What I literally do under the, I think it's section C for implementation, is I copy and paste this entire list. And then I write about it like I'm Michael's organization and I'm going to do these things. And I copy and paste it. So I can send you an example of, and that always gets funded because it's using their language. And then I just edit it with my organization or the organization's, you know, University of Mexico will provide services, and so it's literally like word for word usually.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Yeah. Let's keep on cruising down and see what we can find out. I know we're getting to the 10-minute mark. So sometimes if they have something like hyperlinked here, like it says harm reduction elements, so it wants us to provide direct collaboration with local harm reduction community partners. Whenever I see something like that, that's a hyperlink, I'll click on it. And also, okay, let me get Trene's email, but that, you know, like, okay, well, maybe there's a local harm reduction facility I partner with already. They could provide a letter of commitment and tell us that like, they're going to give us fentanyl strips or something. So that's always a clue that there's more information and I want to learn about it. So let's keep on going. The next section is allowable activities. And to be totally honest with you, I never do these unless our client is like, hey, Allison, we really want to include this HIV screening, and we don't do that now. Otherwise, I don't do any of that, because why would I put in any activities I didn't have to do to get the funding? If you do all of these anyway, or if you're doing them because you get the funding, that's great. But whatever you put in the required activities is what SAMHSA is going to fund you for, and you're getting the money to do those things. And a lot of times it's a lot, those are a lot of required activities. So I would not do allowable at all. The other thing is making sure that you're using, class standards. We have a standard language of one sentence we put in every grant. I can send you all, you can use that. It's all good. We actually have a ton of research and information on the social determinants of health. If you're thinking about what that is or what does that mean, those are the conditions in which we live, and they drive everything about healing and recovery and abundance. Anyway, so the next section is evidence-based practices, and SAMHSA has a list of validated and documented practices they want us to use when we're implementing these required activities. And I don't want to go down too far on the trail of EBPs, but if you have questions about something, or if you're writing this, Michael, and you're like, I don't know if this is an EBP or not, let me know, and I can help you write language about that. And again, we have some standard language we use when we're talking about EBPs and our grants. Happy to share that with you, Michael. It's super easy. And we'll keep on going. So the next section of the grant is what we love. Kelly Milligan, this is your place. Data collection and performance assessment. The GIPRA is a big driver of our funding. So the GIPRA tool defined there is something that you'll use, Michael, when you get this. And so that's part of the data collection. In my opinion, if you're just starting out, Michael, and this is your first SAMHSA grant, I wouldn't add a bunch of other instruments or data collection forms in your grant. I would just focus on the GIPRA, because that's enough. And I can send you a copy of the GIPRA if you want, or maybe Kelly, we could put one in the chat box if people haven't seen that. And we'll keep on cruising. Yeah, and Cindy said, you'll have the pleasure of completing the GIPRA form at the end of this training. Thank you, Cindy. So SAMHSA, this is not a treatment grant that we're funded under for this training, but they have a GIPRA for Kelly and Chris for the University of Wisconsin. So that's a different GIPRA form than this one would be, Michael. Okay, so other expectations about recovery, you all know that. Let's keep on cruising, see what else we can learn. Let's see here. So more information. Okay, so that first part, those first 16 pages is just like background information. We've already read this information from that executive summary. We know, Michael, you're eligible. There's no cost sharing, but let's look at other requirements. So it's only 10 pages, Michael. It's single space, not a lot, but we can get everything in there. We're going to mention a lot about the 4 dimensions of recovery in this, and everything about recovery, housing standards, and then also evidence of experience and credentials. So that's an area that we'll also want to look at. And so there are 3 requirements. So you must be providing direct client recovery services. You're doing that. You must have at least 2 years of experience from the date of application. Michael, will you have 2 years by May?
Yes, we will.
Okay, everything's feeling good. And
Well,
then,
when you say 2 years of experience, you mean that my company, our organization specifically, or the people within our organization?
your organization specifically.
We will not have 2 years of experience by that time.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay. Well, this might be where we kind of stop the race a little bit. So, so how long has your organization been alive in the world?
We started February of this year.
Okay. So February 2023. So when this is due in May, you'll have a year.
Is that the date you got your 501c3 or did you start doing the work prior to receiving the 501c3? Because
We
that
started
time
doing
would
the
count.
work prior to getting the 501c3.
That work would count, that timeline, I would think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep, that's exactly what I would say. So you could show that you have experience, even though you didn't have that nonprofit status. You could have just got your nonprofit status the day before it's due, but you all have been in this field for a while. So good, we're good there. Let's keep running. And then you must comply with all of these local standards. And there's a form that we signed, some standard language about that as well. Let's keep on cruising because we're just a few minutes behind. These are all special forms that SAMHSA has you fill out. Bethany shared. Bethany, was that the SF424? What form was that?
Yep, so that was the SF424A is what we looked at.
Okay, Michael, so that we're good. You've got some experience with that one. And Trevor, you're great. Thank you for chiming in. So that just gives you more on that, but let's skip to the project narrative and the attachments. So in that resource file, we have kind of a list. Bethany put together a checklist of these different components that's kind of general. But again, the narrative is just 10 pages. That justification narrative. Bethany, is that limited with pages or can be as long as you want it to be?
The attachment?
For justification, the budget.
Justification, yeah, it can be as long as, well, and actually I shouldn't say that. It's the form, you're gonna be using that form that we looked at when Allison, you froze that thing that we filled in. That is your budget justification. So they kind of make it easy for you. You don't have to kind of come up with it on your own.
Oh, okay, so you don't have a budget narrative.
That is the budget narrative, yeah. And so that's where it's both is included. So you'll be including that writing underneath.
Okay.
Tyra has,
Yeah.
Hi. Now that y'all have really like walked us through it, it doesn't look as scary as before the training. So as long as we're adding recovery to the nonprofit. And so does that count for 2 years or no?
Yeah, I would say you're good.
Okay.
I mean, the other thing that SAMHSA is really good at is, like, if you're thinking about this, you can even send them, Tyra, an email right now. There'll be a SAMHSA contact information at the bottom of a NOFO. Say like, hey, we're this recovery organization. We've been doing it for a year, but we've been in business 10. Will we qualify for the RCSP grants? Or, so get that conversation going with SAMHSA right away. And email them, call them, and they're usually pretty responsive. And yeah, there should be an email list at the very agency contacts, program eligibility questions that should be listed. Yeah, DGR. So there we go. We could call Timothy Jean or email them on eligibility. So that email right there. And actually you could just put it in the, we'll put that in the chat box. So you guys can say, like, anybody's on this training today and you're not sure if you would be eligible. Yeah, send them an email and get that going. So hhs.gov. Okay, I think I spelled that right. So yeah, it's totally not scary at all. I know we only have a minute left. I feel like we could use like at least another half hour, but we don't have it. So, this process, I think the last thing is the attachments. So these different sections are scored based on points and pages. So that's really important. The most points are under section B. So you get 5 pages, 30 points. And this is where you're talking about your goals, your objectives, what you're going to be doing from that list of required activities. And again, we have 1 million SAMHSA grants that you can just copy and paste what we have written and you'll totally get funded. It's no big deal at all. So that's how you write that 10-page narrative. And then let's just go down to the attachments, because every SAMHSA grant has attachments. And you've got to do these, you got to get them going. We usually put them in a file. Sometimes you'll need a letter of commitment. You'll need different bio sketches from key personnel who will be on the staff. And you'll also need a copy of common or data collection instruments that you'll use. And so under the supporting documents, these are all things that you'll be uploading. So it has like, one of the big things with SAMHSA is the confidentiality and human protections attachment 7. Again, we have an example of that. Copy and paste it and use it. Why not? Bio sketches and job descriptions. Attachment 5. Copy and paste what we have, but make it your own, Michael. So, Michael, I'm really feeling like you all are going to get this grant. You're going to be one of the 3 that are awarded.
I'm hoping so too. I feel it here though.
Yeah, let us know. Like, I hope we can stay in touch. One of the things that I love about our organization, our team members, Bethany and Kelly and I, is we're here to support you. You know, anything, we will do it for no money. I mean, like, we want you all to be successful. We have some knowledge and examples, and we'll just share them with you. Like, you can totally do it. That is the message. So anything else you all want to share or questions? You know, we can stay on a few minutes.
Have y'all left us with your information? Because it sounds like you help us come alongside us and help us write grants. I'm not.
Yep, we write grants. And that's the other thing I just want to caution everybody about. Like, I compared grant writers to car salesmen in the last session. Sorry, Bethany. But you just got to be careful. Like, people will be like, oh, I'll write a grant. It'll be like $10,000, and you give them the money and they don't write it or it doesn't get funded. So we will work with you all. But yeah, that's one of the things that we do. But we are here to build your capacity, and we don't need to be paid necessarily. We'll help you. So it looks like Cindy has to join another webinar. Cindy, can we stay online, or do we have to leave when you leave?
You know what? I think it will be fine if anybody wants to stay on. What I will do, I can either stop the recording, but I'm going to make you the host, Allison, so I can leave without shutting it down. And you'll be in a room where all by yourself here. Okay.
Well, thank you, Cindy.
Sure.
Thanks so much for inviting us to be part of the webinar. And thanks to Chris Kelly as well. So
yes. And we will follow up with everyone with all the resources mentioned here. So don't worry, those are coming. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Sounds good. Thank you, Cindy. So any other questions or any thoughts? I feel like an hour and a half is just not long enough. So I apologize if you wanted to get something you didn't get.
I wanted to ask Kelly, you had put our CSP at samhsahss.gov in the chat. Tell me again what that email address was for.
Yeah, that'll be the contact person for that grant that you're looking at applying for. So if you guys have any questions, I mean, I know Bethany and I emailed somebody for a grant recently that's not even active and open. I would email them, and they'll always respond and give you some good information on, you know, if it's forecasted or if you have questions on eligibility or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
So Michael, you've got to stick with us. And did you send me your address? Because you were one of the winners from the last session.
Yes, I did. I sent it to you in a direct message.
Oh, okay. I'll just find it. And then who's the winner for today? I'm kind of feeling like Tyra, you stepped out, you were brave. So why don't you be the winner for abundance today? So put your address in the chat box and we'll send you a gift from AKA.
Hey.
Yeah.
Y'all don't spam me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and anybody else have questions or thoughts that you want to talk about? Now's the time.
Hi, this is Mark Howard. I was driving before. Unfortunately, I got caught and didn't get on until the very end. But I heard you talking about indirect cost, I think. So we're dealing with that. We have a B Corps grant, which is $300,000 a year, and we did not include the indirect costs, so we cannot charge anything to indirect costs, which sucks because then we have to pay for everything, your phone. This can go towards phone, rent, this kind of stuff. And I tried to research, and you can negotiate one, but honestly, apparently the best thing to do is just do 10%. And that's generally accepted. But you have to build it in your proposal so it's there. Otherwise, you're going to have to come back and do it in your second budget year, which is what we're doing. So you just build in, the 10% of your 300,000, so 30,000 is you want to put towards, office supplies, whatever that kind of stuff is, because you can't bill against that. We actually found that we can't bill people's PTO. We have funded full-time people, but it won't pay for their vacation or sick leave. So that's kind of crazy. So I think you can build that into that indirect cost as well. So however that helps.
Yeah, that's super helpful, Mark. I'm glad that you went through that. So with the 10% you're mentioning, did somebody with the Department of Labor approve that, or you guys just put that in and SAMHSA accepted it?
I tried to get someone to help me and no one was interested, but I learned just from other RCOs, they say just 10% is going to be accepted by SAMHSA. So just build that into your proposal.
Okay, and then you can put that as a line. And Bethany, let's follow up on this because I know this has come up before, like with other grants with that 10% that you're mentioning, but I would, it seems like that's a question for a lot of people. And so we want to make sure we get some resources around that. And Mark, I'm sorry that's happening as far as they're not, able to fund things like PTO that we really need. What are the other, anything else about that story, Mark, that we need to know or be aware of?
No, just that it's been frustrating in this. We've had a couple smaller ones, and so it wasn't as apparent as this one that, now that we're on a 300,000 a year one. But yeah, and it's a pain to do it after the fact. So I recommend, getting it in there in your original proposal. And then you can start billing for that kind of stuff right away. But yeah, I reached out to these people who were supposedly like Department of Health and Human Services specialists on indirect costs, and no one would talk to me. I think in the long run, if you're on this, you're on a General Dynamics, $5 billion contract building planes, it's a bigger issue for those companies, and that's what gets paid attention to. And my understanding, and it is for whatever it is, you're never going to get more than maybe 12% or something like that if you go through this whole process of negotiating an indirect cost rate. So it's honestly probably just easier to slap the 10%, which apparently is generally accepted.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really good information to know. And yeah, because you've got to have that IDC, just get things up and running and going. And I think that's the hard thing, is that sometimes the feds apply these $5 billion rules to, companies and organizations that are just getting started, and they kind of lump everybody together. So we'll do some work on that and see what we can find. But we're we don't know, we're not experts in that, but yeah, there's got to be some help in that area. Anybody else want to share, or any other questions you all have? Anybody going to write a grant right now that we can help you with? I've got some time.
I would say the other thing is, if you're going to go into this, you need to have a finance, accounting kind of person who's pretty dedicated, because you got to track everything. you've got a bit, you bill after the fact. They pay right away. It's really kind of automatic, but you have to submit, I think it's weekly or monthly. So you got to have cash flow, so that you can pay stuff and then get the money back. What was it? I don't know. I had another thought which just escaped me from this. And I'm only on the board. I'm not seeing this day to day, but I know what's going on. What was the other thing I had to say about this grant? We have and I don't know if this is something you guys do. It's Allison, right? We have an outside evaluator who, we're paying. It's actually honestly not that much, but they help with the tracking of all the. It's very important to have all the demographics in your organization, who you're serving, and they help us tracking all that and come in and teach us how to use for their peer recovery specialists. We've got to do these onboarding questionnaires. So they kind of help us, and they're sort of an external eye on the grant. So
Yeah.
something else to build into your budget proposal.
Yeah, and that
The SAMHSA, your project manager will help you find. Well, they helped us find one.
Yeah.
They're actually in Tennessee and we're in New Hampshire. But anyway, it all works.
Yeah. No, it totally works. And that's we love evaluating SAMHSA grants. That's actually how we stay in business. So I don't know how many we're evaluating right now, maybe 25. But yeah, so that's a big part of, that's actually what we do more than grant writing. So love that you all have that support. And if anybody needs an evaluation team, we're always looking to step in and help. So, and usually I think SAMHSA caps evaluation about what, 20%, Bethany? So, any other thoughts? Thank you so much for being here. It's been so fun to talk about grants. It's like the possibilities.
I'm ready to look for the right grant that's for us. They're just and so I need to go through. I get the notifications every day, but I'm trying to find the right, for what we want to help us grow. We have a crisis where we are in Texas. With the young people and drugs. So it's bad. So 16-year-olds physically addicted. And so we really need something in place in our area to help.
Yeah. Well, Tyra, let us know. Send us an email, because there are funds that come out every day. And like actually with the fentanyl crisis, opiates, everything, I mean, there's so much funding right now, and I've been on a lot of calls lately with existing grants, and they're like, hey, we're getting a supplement, we're getting more money to do this work. So it might even be that, do you have any bigger partners in your area, like state, like maybe the state of Texas or county or other groups?
The problem, well, actually, so in the particular area that I'm talking about, there's nothing. That we don't even have there's not even a United Way that serves this area.
Oh.
That's how bad it is. So it's rural, and it's bad. Lots of human trafficking. It's a lot of stuff. And so I don't see y'all's email address in this.
Oh, you don't? Here, I'll send it to you. I'll just send it again. The Rural Community Toolbox is a great place to find rural funding. They have all the SAMHSA grants. I mean, there might be some funding grants we've written for we work in a lot of rural areas where we could easily just put your organizations, like switch that, like get you funding. I'm really sorry that it's such like a crisis and it feels like there's not a lot happening, especially with the young people. So, but there are ways we can find funding to get more resources, abundance, don't get discouraged.
Thank you.
send us an email. Here to help. Anybody else? Thoughts? Now's your time. So Michael, we're gonna be in touch with you, man. I'm gonna put it on my calendar around like December to send you an email, make sure we're getting ready to go for RCSP.
Thank you, Allison. I've got your contact info too, so you'll be hearing from me as well. If I don't hear from you first, so.
Okay, yeah, and I'll get your card from the last session. I got your address written down, so
All right.
gift card. So, okay, well, if there's nothing else, we can just end it before the next Zoom call, and I got one in 14 minutes, so you'll probably do too.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
stay in touch. Thank you.
And Bethany and Allison, I'm going to send out an email that forwards what Chris sent last time and then the specific grant sites. So you'll see that right now for everybody who added their email in. I went in and grabbed them too. So we should be good.
Oh, yay. Yeah, and that resource file for, I guess I could reorganize that, Kelly, so we had session 1 resources, session 2. But you know, whatever is easiest for folks. And then we can definitely let people know we'll be adding info on IDCs. I actually haven't really thought about IDCs that much. I don't know. You know, like, I guess that if, you know, it's, I think about it when I see the percentage of like 55%, but
Yeah.
I'll get some resources on that. Okay, cool. Well, sounds good. I will, I'll sign off then. You all have a really good day.
All right, you too. Thank you again.
Okay, bye.